Welcome back to How to Craft Fair. This is episode number 13 in the Craft Fair booth review series where I take a look at a real craft fair booth submitted by one of my subscribers, and we're going to break this down into 10 segments. I'll point out things that they're doing well and should continue to do, and then also identify some areas of improvement where they can level up their booth. Along the way, think about your craft fair booth and how you can apply these tips to make your setup even better. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so for today's episode, we're going to be reviewing Paul and Thea's booth, and they are a couple who have a business named P&T Creations. And very exciting, they are from up in Saskatchewan, Canada. All right, so first booth outside of the US, very cool. Now, their booth is going to be a mixture of a few different themes, okay? So it's going to be woodwork, vinyl, and paper crafts in the form of greeting cards, okay? So we'll be looking at a few different things on the table. And to basically summarize their current situation, they have a setup for a larger booth, okay? So they have like a game plan for, their larger spaces, like a 10 by 10, things like that. But what they're doing right now is, I believe it's a weekly event, and it's at a farmer's market, okay? And the space that they have, it's not the same spot every time. So the organizer will basically place them in random spots at the farmer's market, okay? So adaptability is absolutely huge for this booth because they basically need ideas and a game plan for different situations at any given week, okay? So what we're going to be looking at is a smaller booth, much, much smaller, and it's basically a 6-foot table spot, okay? So very different. I'm really excited to do this review because of this, because predominantly the booth reviews in the past have been 10 by 10s, all right? So this is going to help a lot of people, I think, because a lot of people are in situations where they don't have a 10 by 10. Particularly at indoor shows, you see smaller kind of tabletop spots. So again, really excited for this review. Really excited for the first person outside of the US. So kind of cool to check that box off. But yeah, let's go ahead and start diving in. Okay, so here is the first look at the booth, all right? And like I said, it's a 6-foot table, and here's Paul, all right? Looks super thrilled to have his picture being taken. But, all right, so the first element that we're going to break down into detail here is displays, all right? So right off the bat, what I'm going to say with displays is that it's going to be extremely important for you guys to really hammer home verticality with your displays, okay? So keep that in mind if you're a vendor who has a smaller booth and maybe only a 6-foot spot or an 8-foot spot. If you can't branch out and go wider with your booth as far as square footage goes, then you need to use vertical space and go up, okay? So going up is going to be your best friend the smaller your booth gets, all right? So the first thing that I'm going to recommend is a tall greeting card rack. So when we look at the left side of the booth, a lot of it is being occupied by these greeting cards. And I have a second alternate view of a different week that they took their picture, okay? So I'll show you a different angle. And you can see here they moved them to the far left, okay? So the cards are now on this side, all right? So some of the designs are obstructed by cards that are in front of it, okay? So you can kind of see up here, you see the congrats card and you see the 2023 card really well, but then you can't see these cards behind it. Same thing over here. We have some Father's Day cards, so you can see this first one really well, but then as you go back, they kind of get hidden by one another. So a greeting card rack is going to solve a lot of issues at the booth. So the first thing is that it's going to provide vertical improvement. So like I said, going up is going to be your best friend when you don't have a lot of space going side to side, okay? So it's going to address that situation. And then it's going to save table space, all right? So if you're able to put like a little spinning display thing on the side of the table, then you're able to take all of this stuff off from basically here to here. That's going to free up all that table space, okay? So that's another big benefit. And then, like we talked about before, it's going to allow you to show off the full design of each card. Okay, so as we said, some of these designs are hidden right now, but if you have a rack, such as you see here, each design is featured equally. Okay, and you can see the entire card, so that's another benefit. And then on the top of the spinning display, you can use the very top of that to display your pricing sign. So where you have that here on the table, you can basically make another card if you want, and then use that as the top, and then that'll free up even more room on the table. This is a really good way to get noticed, your booth noticed as well, because if you have everything on your tabletop, it's pretty much just another tabletop booth, okay? And a lot of people are doing this, but if you have like one rack to the side, and especially one that's like 5 feet tall, that's going to be eye-catching. People are going to be drawn to that because it's different. It's not just another tabletop booth. So just give this some consideration. Yes, it does kind of suck that it's like a financial investment. The one that I have pictured here is currently listed on Amazon for $125. And like I said, that's tough to swallow. I mean, that's an expensive display. But what I would recommend is using this as an idea and then finding something that might work for you. Maybe you don't want to stand up one that's completely beside the table. They make ones that are tabletop spinning displays. And while they don't offer as many slots to display, different card designs, it would at least be nice to have a tabletop one to address a lot of the issues that we mentioned before. Even putting one on the tabletop would probably take up half the amount of space that's being used now, okay? And then you still get a lot of those benefits. You still get to show off every design fully and things like that. So just snoop around, see if you find something that you like on there, and consider it for the booth, because like I said, verticality, I mean, I'm going to stress that a lot during this review. It's really going to be your best friend, okay? But let's move on to the other parts of the booth as far as displays. So I'm going to go back to the other angle because it was looking at more of a lower viewpoint. Okay, so then over here, it looks like you have a few keychains, okay, and nice job of getting it up and raised so that you can have some displayed in front of it, and then you can have some displayed with some kind of height, okay? So I like this. And then over here, you've done a good job of, and you've continued this onto the other picture, so this is good, but you have a few things that are stood up, and then you have a little bit of a riser with like a fabric cloth over it, and then you have a few things up above it, okay? So let's look at the other angle, and you continue this over here, okay? And you've kind of even got it over here with the cards where you have like a little bit of a one-step riser, and then you've got this fabric cloth enabling you to go a second tier and use a second level, okay? So that's excellent thinking on your part. Over here, we have a display pretty much for your signage. So we actually kind of touched on this in the past couple of booth review videos, but it's kind of cool because you can almost like blend display and signage and have it kind of coexist, okay? So where you have like your payment information, you have a wood piece behind it, like a I never know what to call these, you guys. Like, help me out in the comments. Like, what's a good term for these like wood slices? But it's kind of cool because it's giving it some character, and it's pointing away from the table. So that's good. It's not just laid down flat on the table. I like that. And then you have really, really nice business card holders. I really like this. It's subtle, but it's just a really nice touch of character and look into like a view into your personality, okay? So this is really, really cool. I haven't really seen anything like this on the booth reviews yet, and a very nice touch, okay? So then over here, once we start looking towards the right side of the booth, we have the wine glass holder. It's a standalone item, right? But it's really, really cool because it's kind of like a standalone item, and it's like a display for itself too. So it's really, really cool. I like this just on its own, how you have it. Over by the coasters, you have a large slice of wood. Again, no idea what to call these. But this is kind of the coaster area, and I really, really dig this. I like how you guys have done this because it just really hammers home that like natural aspect of the booth. And especially for the woodworking section, it's just very, very cool, So I like that you have this as a little bit of a riser. What is this? Maybe 2 or 3 inches going up. And then you've got the coasters on top of that. And because the coasters are, I think they're stained. And correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but I think these are stained and this is left natural. There's good contrast there. So you've done a good job of incorporating the display into the idea and the theme of the product. Okay, woodwork, right? And you've done a good job of like differentiating the two so that the items stand out from the display. Okay, so really, really good job here overall. I really dig this. Some of the coasters have like a little easel or stand to get them stood up. So you have 3 down here and the 4th one is up facing outwards. Again, beautiful. Love it. Back here, this does get a little bit buried. Okay, so I think this is a smoker. I can't tell what this is, you guys, but you have it on a little bit of a riser, not as much as this one. So you have it on a little bit of a riser and you have the cloth, okay? So the cloth is great for displaying a basic color so that your items stand out well as opposed to the color, okay? So I do like that, but I would like to see this riser be as high as this one, okay? Because it would help it to get it out from behind this coaster sign. But overall, I mean, there's going to be challenges with a booth like this, just as far as like breathing room. Okay, so that's another thing that we're going to talk about a fair amount in this particular video is how to display things and get as much out there as you can on a 6-foot table, but still have breathing room. When you look at from here to here, okay, when you look at everything that's on top of the table, it is kind of tight. So I can recommend a couple of things for this, okay? So I think the spinning rack is going to help, okay? Because like I said, I think it's probably going to take up about half the space as it currently is, okay? So that's going to buy a little bit of room. Over here, this display, if you can get it like twice the size, either going twice as high or just utilizing 2 of them and getting some of these off of just the tabletop, I think that would help, okay? So I think the keychain section has a little bit of room for improvement as well. The signs themselves, these pricing signs, if you decide to stick with these for this particular setup, what it would do is set them up vertically. Okay, so they're all horizontal right now. So horizontal, 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 and horizontal. And one here. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 of them. Now that's quite a bit of real estate for a small table. Okay, so what it would do is make them, write them out so that they're set up vertically. And it's not that much, but even that is going to save you a little bit of table space. Okay, so you basically have to get really creative with like every square inch of a 6-foot tabletop, okay, because they're so precious. That space is so valuable. So that's another thing that you can do to buy yourself at least a little bit more room is, write these out and design them so that you can stand them up vertically. And then that way, you're saving a couple inches for all 7 of these. All right, so I think that's probably about it for displays. I do like these risers on the right side. I really, really love this setup. I think this is probably a highlight for me. This is beautiful, very nice. The business card display that we talked about before, very cool. I would maybe, I know that you kind of designed like a more subtle one here. I would repeat it. I would make a couple of these because this pattern is super, super cool. And it kind of plays off of this item right here. Okay. So I like that, you have the different woods glued together and all that stuff. And to me, it would be like a reflection off of that product. And that's kind of like what you've done over here. So like you have the coasters, which are the slices of wood, and they're displayed on the really big slice of wood. And you can kind of repeat that over here like you've done. So, you have this item that has the different types of wood that are, glued together, and you've done that here. So I think I'd like to kind of see it over here too, and it would just start to like really tie everything in. So I think you guys are doing a pretty good job. It's there's only so much that you can do with a 6 foot table spot. So we're going to be just talking about maximizing the opportunity and that space and breathability. So it's kind of like a balance. You want to like go up so that you can free up space on the table itself. Okay. All right. So now that we've covered quite a bit of display options, let's go ahead and move to pricing. So pricing, it looks like you're doing a really good job with. Some things are marked individually, like for example, this piece here is marked individually. This piece over here is individual. I think it's pretty obvious, just looking at the booth pretty quickly, scanning it fairly quickly. You can tell what everything costs, so there's no issues there. With the chalkboard signs, I would invest just a little bit more like effort into them. Okay. So I like the signs. They're cute, and they're eye catching because, you can see these wood squares kind of pop out like from your peripheral vision, even if you're just kind of scanning the booth pretty quickly. Okay. So you can catch them pretty quickly. But what I would do is just, first of all, I'd probably decide on a consistent color theme. Okay, so you have like blue and red, or maybe that's like blue and pink. So you have blue and red, blue and pink over here, and then you have all red, and then the white smiley, and then you have, I think this is white. It kind of looks like whitish blue. Then you have white over here, and then you have white over here, and then you have white and red over here. Okay, so what I would do is just kind of like adopt a game plan for what parts of the sign are going to be what color. Okay, I would recommend the prices to be green. Okay, because green like money, it just makes sense to have the prices be green. Okay, and then the name of the item, I would probably go with white, because the red or the pink is getting a little bit lost in some sections. Okay, it just doesn't have as strong of contrast as the white does. Okay, so go with a really bright, crazy green, like a really obnoxious bright green for the price, and then go with maybe like white or something that's going to stand out better than the red for the name of the item. And then this one right here, that we take custom orders, and then ask us about our draw, which, by the way, you guys, drop a comment and let me know what this means about our draw. Is that like a drawing, like a giveaway, or what is that? This particular sign right here, you might want to do like a little bit of clarity just on like what you mean, because I don't know what that means. And, maybe help me out in the comments just to let us know what exactly that means. For these general speak signs, this one here and the custom order one, I would just stick with one color for those two signs. Okay, so just kind of keep it consistent. But yeah, that's something that you can do to kind of like hammer home consistency at the booth, and then it's just going to make it easier to find the price. Okay, and it's going to make that price like stand out a little bit better, because the price here is red, the price here is white, the price here is blue, and the price here is red. Okay, so you kind of just want to hammer home consistency. All right, and then for pricing, besides that, I think you're good. I think you're in good shape. You're doing a really good job, like I said, of either picking individual or covering it by the sign. So really, just besides kind of working on these signs itself, you're doing good. You're doing really, really good. Okay, now as far as signage goes, I think you're doing a really good job, especially considering the limited space that you have. Okay, so pricing signs, there's plenty of them, and you've got them scattered throughout the table. And then you have a payment option sign right here. Okay, so that's always good. And then you also have a marketing sign. Okay, so as far as as far as signage goes, I think you're doing a really good job. I don't really have a whole lot to comment about it, except for touching up the pricing signs as mentioned in the previous segment. Okay, so I would say, hats off to you guys, doing a good job here. And, these improvements are what you can do to take that signage to the next level. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right into marketing. So marketing is strength at the booth, okay? So there is a big banner, and we're going to talk about their smaller setup compared to their larger setup, particularly in this marketing section. So as we've mentioned in this video before, one of the challenges with a smaller booth is breathing space, okay? And not only does that apply to the top of the table, but it also applies to signage that's used. So let's take a look at how their setup looks when the booth is bigger. And here it is right here. So there's two tables, right? And they have their pricing signs, they have their business card holder out, and it's pretty much like a similar setup, but it's just more spread out. Now, when we look at the banner back here, it feels appropriate. It feels like it's the right size. It looks good. The business logo has, a pretty big area on the banner. And then the contact information, there is legibility there, so it's big enough you can read it from pretty good distance. They even have a little part that says ask about customized orders, and then they have what they make and sell. They're hitting all of those segments that I usually talk about with a banner. The three big ones that I usually mention are a logo, what you make and sell, and then the best way to get a hold of you. Okay, so all of those are being hit with the sign, so that's great. But the size of the banner overall feels appropriate for a booth like this. But when we come over to the 6-foot table, it feels like it's too much, okay? It feels like it's kind of dominating your view, like as a shopper. And the attention kind of comes down to this because it's a little bit of a busier banner, okay? So it's got like a lot going on it, which again is fine for the big 10 by 10 booths. And with a setup like this, when you have a 6-foot table, I would invest in an alternate sign. So maybe something that's about this big. So cut a foot or two off on each side. And you can either stick with a banner like this, like you've got, or you could even go with a table runner that would just come down and have, a smaller version of your logo. And then maybe just like the contact info, instead of having a lot of the space dedicated to, the woodworking, the vinyl, and paper craft projects. That's kind of a lot of space to dedicate to a smaller banner or runner, okay? So maybe I would just go with the logo, and then the best way that you want people to connect with you, okay? So I would try to select one, all right? But that's what I would do with a smaller table like this, a smaller 6-foot table, because this size right here is probably just too much, okay? And it starts to steal the show away from the items, and the items kind of get lost in this mix of the big banner and then all the signs, okay? So you got sign over here. And then you have your couple of payment signs. So there's the square one here, and then there's the square one back here as well. It's almost like a try to find the item type of deal, where the items, they're not standing out as well as they should. So I think this is a huge opportunity to improve the smaller booth. And by limiting the supporting acts, okay, so that's what I call the signage and even the displays and stuff like that, by limiting those, you can really start to put the spotlight back on the items. This is a good example right here too. So you have this cell phone stand, okay, and it's $10, but there's only one. All right, so there's only one being displayed. So what I would do is actually just go with an individual tag for this particular item instead of using the big sign, okay? So you have an individual tag on the wine setup. So the wine bottle and the 2 wine glasses, you got the tag hanging down right here. That's nice because you're not dedicating a big sign to just one item. So I would replicate that with the cell phone stand, and then that way the stand itself can be shining and you're not using a sign that's as big as the item itself. So you want to try to just put that spotlight and focus on the items whenever possible. Now, when you have a situation like the cards where there's 10 of them out and whatnot, then okay, yeah, that's when you want to definitely use the sign that covers the grouped pricing, okay, for this group of items. Same thing over here. The keychains, good use of the bigger sign, and that way, you don't have to worry about individual tags on all of these items. But for the big solo items, that's when you definitely want to go with the individual tags, okay? So I would ditch this sign, and then that way, you're just gonna improve that breathability at the booth little by little. All right, now we did touch on the business cards. I like that you have them out. Good job with that, okay? So you're doing a good job of mentioning the custom orders, okay? So that is a form of marketing, you guys, because that can lead to like future sales. So you have that here, you have that covered. You got your business logo, your business name is in the logo. So that's like a nice 2-for-1. I like when people do that, when they have the name actually built into the logo. And then, you have your contact information leading to future possibilities. And then you have the classic approach with the business cards themselves. All right. So really good job with the marketing, you guys. Again, especially considering the space that, you're working with. Okay. Now we're going to dive into vertical space, and let's take a look at this angle of the booth here. And vertical space we have covered with the greeting cards already, all right? And then the keychains, I would like to see a second stand, or else one that's like double the size, whatever you can do to get more real estate freed up on the table itself. So it's okay to have like maybe 3 or 4 on the table, and it looks like you've angled these upwards, okay? So you can kind of see like a little riser right here with the cloth again. And I really like that you at least did that, okay? So that's really, really nice to have these propped up so that as we step back away from the table, you can still see them and they're not just like facing straight up in the sky. So really good job of at least propping these up, but I would just reduce the number that you've gone with this technique with to maybe like 3, okay? And then get the rest on like a second display that's like this, all right? And then speaking of verticality, like, we did touch on making the signs themselves vertical. So that's going to free up some table space as well. Okay. So that is an element of verticality. Generally we talk about like going way up off the table, and that's what we're talking about with verticality. But think about it on really small, localized examples as well. Like these signs, you can just flip those vertical, and that's going to save table space. So on the right side of the booth, it gets a little bit crowded, okay? So there's decent spacing over here and decent separation. Like you can clearly see where the keychains stop and the greeting cards start, right? And then over here, there's like a nice gap as well, but then over here it gets a little tight. So by doing improvements over here, you can now start to kind of shift down a little bit and make this a little bit more breathable over here, okay? This item in particular over here, is this a cutting board, you guys? Oh, okay, this just says trivet. Okay, so this is basically just like something that you would like lay down on your table, and if you had like a hot dish or a warm dish, you could place that on here and it wouldn't like wreck your table, okay? So this is definitely something that you could prop up vertically and it wouldn't affect how it's being displayed as far as like its usage, you know what I mean? So I would do that because then you'd save quite a bit of space. This is a really wide item, and that would free up some room too, where you can kind of get a little bit more breathability over here. All right. So just think about doing little things like that. Like, how can you buy yourself some space? All right. And I think just doing that, by having each item stand alone a little bit more, it's going to make each one stand apart and shine better. And look at the coasters for an example. The coasters are on an island by themselves and they look really, really good because it's like, this is the coaster part of the table. Okay. This is its dedicated spot. It has its dedicated space, predominantly because of what it's being displayed on. So that's kind of like how you have to think with each item throughout the booth, is you want to have like these little islands where each one has its chance to shine and be noticed, okay? But then as far as vertical improvements over here, we did talk about this back display, okay, the one with the cloth over it. This one could probably be improved a little bit by going the height that you've chosen for the cell phone stand. Okay, so I would go up a little bit higher with this. The cell phone stand could probably get moved over a little bit, especially if you take the sign part of it off and have this kind of more in the middle, the stand itself. Then you should be able to move this down to the left, and then that'll buy you some room over here where the two wine setups will be able to show a little bit better. Okay, so you'll have room for these. And then finally, this item back here, it'll have some room too, especially once it's propped up a little bit higher. So we're not really talking about anything major. So this is kind of the exciting thing, is that really the only pain in the butt like expense that we've talked about so far is, investing in a runner or a smaller banner, and then investing in like a swivel tabletop greeting card display. So the rest of them are pretty much just like different techniques. Okay, we've talked about the technique with getting some better verticality here. And then we've talked about the technique of flipping the signs so that you get better verticality and flipping some products like this one right here, the trivet. Okay, so yeah, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of expenses to have to worry about with, leveling up. So that's always good. And something that I'm trying to focus on with the reviews is to do this reasonably and not be like, okay, now you have to go out and spend $700. You know what I mean? So that's really what we want to focus on, is these little things that we can do in a realistic manner. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to colors, contrast, and texture. So I think overall pretty darn good at this booth. I like the black tablecloth, and the sign is taking up a lot of attention because it is texture. Okay, so texture, a lot of times what we're referring to is like patterns and stuff like that in tablecloths, but having script and fonts is a form of texture at the booth. Okay, it's not a solid color or something like that. So it is pretty busy. Okay, and that's why I recommended that, if you're going to put a little bit of money into improving the booth, this is definitely a priority. Okay, because you want to kind of just tone it down so that there's less texture and pattern and less busyness at the booth, and it'll have the items shining more. Okay, as far as the colors go, I like the color of the banner. It has that wood look to it, and there's good contrast throughout your booth as well. So in particular, the one that stands out is the keychains. I really like the plain white backing cards for your keychains, and it's really enabling these designs to stand out. So especially because of the fact that the keychain colors are so wide in variety. There's so many different colors of keychains. So you need to stick with something really, really basic. And this is where you made a really good choice, because you didn't do anything crazy. You stuck with white, and you have your business name right there on the corner. Let me zoom in a little bit. Nice touch here with these. Made for you by P&T Creations. Beautiful. Really, really like it. Okay. So this again is a really, really nice element of the booth. Very good decision making with these. And let's back out a little bit. All right, and then when we look at contrast and other areas of the booth, we did talk about the coasters, how, that was another really good decision on your part. And if you look throughout the booth, there's a lot of acrylic displays. Okay, so you see acrylic display here, acrylic display over here. That's good too, because it's keeping the attention on the item. And that's mainly what you want to be doing throughout the entire booth. So again, good decisions when it came to that. And then if we look over here too on the setup that you have now, even now you made a good decision on how to put those greeting cards out there, because it's not a crazy color for those display stands. It's just acrylic. Okay, so even though I would recommend going with the vertical setup with the rotating display, at least now you've made a good decision there by using the very basic ones. Okay, so yeah, color contrast and texture, I think you're doing just fine with. And let's take a look at that bigger booth just to kind of make sure that we're covering that booth every now and then. And again, very, very good color contrast and texture, particularly in this booth because the banner is separated from the items. So I want you guys to really take a look at that when it comes to the two booths. Let me actually see if I can get these side by side for a second, okay? All right, you guys, I want you to see these two booths side by side. So when it comes to like the busyness of a booth, that's generally what I'm trying to cover the most when I get into this colors, contrast, and texture segment. Okay, we're kind of just talking about how easy is it to focus on the items, okay? And this is kind of night and day where it's very, very easy to see these tabletop items because the tabletops are all black, right? So nice consistency there. And then over on this side, the banner is just taking so much attention away from everything that's up on top of the table. Okay. So this is a really nice example to see them side by side, how that banner can kind of harm the chance of people focusing on those products. And on this table, there's pretty good breathability just because of the fact that, of course, you were able to spread out more, okay? And there's more products out there. So you have quite a few coasters out here. And up here, you made a good decision on going with this vertical stand, okay? So that was tremendous. I really liked this stand in particular. You actually don't have that in the other 6-foot table picture. So I would try to incorporate this back into the booth somehow because, like I said, verticality is going to be your friend. But again, when we just look at the overall comparison of the two booths when it comes to the distraction factor, it's so much more toned down over here as it is over here, okay? And a lot of that is because of that banner. So if you're able to swap that out for a runner, just a runner that's maybe like 2 feet wide, that's going to make a huge, huge difference at the booth. I promise it's going to just pull the focus back onto the items a lot more. So I wanted to show them side by side. And, yes, in some ways it's not fair to compare the two booths side by side like this just because there's so much more space to work with. But I wanted to show you, at least for like a distraction factor with the colors, contrast, and texture, just to show you what getting either the banner out of the way or having like a small runner is going to do for the booth visually, okay? So now let's talk about the strength of the theme. So the theme is a little bit spread out, okay, because there's, some woodwork, some vinyl items, and then some paper crafts and cards, okay? So it's a little bit spread out, but I think in the way that you're displaying it, you're on your way, okay? But there's a little bit of room for improvement with consistency, okay? So that's really what you want to establish throughout the booth when you have items that touch on different themes, okay? So one thing that you can do to really hammer home consistency is your signage. And we talked about using consistent colors on every sign, okay? So that's just going to help to provide that home base and that familiar feeling, okay? And that just familiar look throughout the booth. We talked about the business card holder, okay? So let me go to the other image where both business card holders are out there. All right, here we go. So we talked about the two different types of business card holders. I would just go with this one, okay? So make a second one that looks exactly like this with the light stain. It's not a stain, I'm sorry, I think it's different woods actually, but the light wood, the dark wood, and the red wood, and then repeat that over here, okay? That's gonna provide some consistency as well. So think about things that you can do that are just gonna hammer home that sense of consistency, okay? What I would recommend is these cards are a really, really nice touch, like I mentioned before, okay? And I really like that you have the little thing in the corner that says made for you by P&T Creations. Can you possibly scale these down and print off a whole bunch of these and use a smaller version as your individual price tags like this? Because that would be really cool to see that theme of a tag kind of continued on over here. And yeah, there's some elbow grease and work that goes into making tags like that, but I think that would be a really nice touch and help the booth as far as the theme goes, and just to really hammer that theme home all the way across the booth when it comes to your signage, your marketing, even your price tags. So that's going to help to provide that consistent feeling from all corners of the booth. Other things for the strength of the theme, I don't know that there's a whole lot because, you guys are obviously creating what you want to create, and I like that. And especially when it's couples or family members or whatever, when it's more than one person, generally you're going to see booths that are more spread out as far as the items being offered when there's more than one person operating the booth, okay? So that's just like a natural thing. But it's up to you guys to incorporate those other elements and tie those other elements into one theme, okay? So it's not really going to be about consistency with your items. It's going to be about those supporting roles, okay? So your banner, your signage, your pricing signs, your product display signs, things like that. That's what's going to drive the theme home with a booth like this. All right, so now let's dive into accessibility. So when I mention that, I'm talking about people's ease of getting into the booth and looking at the items, how far away they can see the items from. Do they need to be standing on top of the table? And then once they're close to the booth, are there any kind of tripping hazards? Are there any displays that are insecure or they're going to fall over? Things like that. So when we take a look at the booth, first of all, with a smaller booth, you're going to have a more basic setup, so it's not going to be as ridiculous as a full 10 by 10 outdoor booth. So that's going to help it out. There's really no tripping hazards around. You have the stretch tablecloth, which is always good. And even on your bigger setup, it looks like you have tablecloths that are more or less contoured to the table. So like you can see it right here with this one. And then this one is pretty contoured as well, where it's hugging just the foot of the table. So very good on both booths, okay? Nothing really laying around the booth. I don't know what this object actually might be a divider. I bet you the organizer put that for your guys's like booth limitation for how far you can spread out. But yeah, nothing really laying around the booth, no cords or anything for electrical to worry about. So yeah, accessibility, not an issue. And you're doing a really good job of propping things up so that you can be standing away from the table and see everything from a distance, okay? So that's something that I think you guys are doing really well with at your booth, is making sure to have things propped up so that people can stand back and be like, oh, okay, I can see the signs, I can see the items, everything's great, and I don't need to be standing right on top of the table and looking straight down, okay? So again, really good job of making sure that that's a priority at your booth. So yeah, I mean, accessibility, you guys are doing a really good job. I don't have really anything to say about that. I think you're doing everything really well on both booths. Yeah, not a lot of advice to offer, which I guess with this particular segment is a good thing. So very good. All right, now let's talk about general use of space. So again, we've kind of beaten this horse to death already on this particular review, but with the 6-foot table, I mean, there's not a lot of space to work with, period. Okay, so general use of space, we're generally talking about finding a balance between going up with your displays and maximizing verticality and using that vertical square footage while freeing up space on the table so that there's breathability. Okay, so it's about going up, and then it's about maximizing just those gaps so that each item can shine on its own. All right, so we've pretty much talked about the different tips and tricks that you can do as far as that goes, but I just want you to keep that like simple rule in mind, is use your space up and down really well while making sure the items are breathable. And if you do that, I think you have a really good chance of having a booth that, although it's small, it's still really going to stand out and be very, very attractive. All right, so now let's talk about the eye test. And the eye test is basically the 2 or 3 seconds that somebody is strolling by your booth, and what are you doing as a vendor to get them to stop to check out items at your booth. So I think the booth is filled with products that are well made, well crafted. They're really nice looking items. So your items are doing a lot of the talking, okay? And the banner, yes, definitely needs to be toned down, okay? Because if you tone down the banner, that's going to put even more attention on your items. And like I said, your items are very well crafted and attractive. So that's just going to help you that much more to have all that focus going on the items, So really, we're talking about minimizing some things. We're talking about minimizing the banner. This cell phone stand pricing sign can go and get replaced by an individual tag that's going to put more attention on the item. So it's examples like that where with the 6-foot table, you almost have to if you're not going up, okay, if you're not having a display that's going up and being vertical, then you almost have to figure out, how do I cut down the distractions? How do I limit people's options to look at? Basically, it sounds really counterintuitive. It almost sounds like, well, if I don't have anything on the table, it's going to look blank. It's going to look like there's nothing there. But you basically want to get it to the point where the only option that people can look at is items and pricing signs. And that's like basically it. You know what I mean? Just really, really cut down those distractions. Even little things like, I don't know if the show is going at this point. Like, there's a couple of people that they look like shoppers back here, So like even things like your guys' drinks and stuff. If you can use like a tote top, so like you have like a storage tote here underneath the table, if you can like slide that where it's kind of in between where you guys are sitting and use that to set your drinks down, like do everything you possibly can to make the tabletop only about the items, okay? So that's basically kind of what we're working with. But yeah, like I said, with the eye test, I think you're doing pretty good. I mean, I like the items. I think they're crafted very well. They're attractive. There's good variety of each type of item. So there's different coaster sets, there's different greeting cards, there's different keychains, different colors of things. So you've got good variety within the items to pick from as well. So I think this is just a bunch of little tweaks, you guys. And as far as maximizing the 6-foot table, I hope that there was enough in this review to kind of give you at least some ideas to work with. You definitely aren't starting off with a bad booth. So you're as I've pointed out, you've made a lot of really good decisions already. I mean, we talked about the acrylic displays. Whenever you have something displayed, that's a good option, because when you look at these in particular, there's a lot of displays here because there's many things stood up. The eye automatically is going to the items and not the displays. Okay, so really, really nice job of keeping the focus on the items here. The verticality in this particular display is really nice. I do like the chalkboards, but we just talked about a couple of fixes with that. But again, there are some really, really nice aspects of this booth that you should continue to do while mixing in, a few of the improvements. But in summary, I hope that you got some good information out of this. You guys, please give them a follow. They have a really, really active page on Facebook. Okay, so their Facebook page, I was kind of laughing at it because I took a look at it today, and they apologized for not being active on their page, and they hadn't posted in like 10 days. And like, that's pretty good. Like, if you feel like you have to say sorry to your followers for not posting for like 10 days and because you guys were sick, like you're doing a pretty good job of staying active on your social media account, so give them a follow on Facebook. They're really active on there. They do a ton of posts and stuff like that. So really cool page to follow. And yeah, if you're up in Canada, Saskatchewan area, check them out, so again, first booth outside of the US, really exciting. And I appreciate you guys working with me. I had a lot of questions for this booth in particular, especially because of the fact that, the organizer, it's a really unique situation where they don't have like a set booth location for each weekly event, and they're kind of just bounced around in all these different areas and situations too. So, I was talking to Thea quite a bit on this particular booth about their situation and all their different booth setups and stuff like that. So really, really good communication from these vendors as well. So I really appreciate that. And I'm sure that translates to their customers, especially with customized orders and stuff like that. So great vendors, great people, and give them a follow. If you want to have your booth reviewed, check out my website. I have all the information on there about booth reviews. I also have a link to my Etsy shop where I have downloadable printable resources for, you can use for your craft fairs. So that's on there. I also have a bunch of Amazon links of items that I recommend from Amazon, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff on there. So be sure to check that out. All right, so this was episode number 13 of the Craft Fair Booth Review series, and if you want to check out all the other booth reviews, click on this playlist above. Please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and thank you all so much for watching.